Fire Emblem fans say they want peace. But Fire Emblem games that survive the longest are usually the ones that start wars. And no, I don't mean harassment, pointless outrage, or people screaming at each other online for no reason. I mean controversy. And when I say controversy, I mean disagreements, competing values, story choices, mechanics that split the fan base. The kind of friction that makes people care enough to keep talking. Because if we're being honest, one of the biggest reasons Fire Emblem Engage lost momentum so quickly is that it didn't give the fan base enough to fight for. And that's interesting because Engage actually did a lot right. The visuals were polished, the battle animations were fantastic, the music remixes were great, and for a lot of players, the gameplay was some of the best modern Fire Emblem has had in years. So how does a game with that many strengths fade from conversation so much faster than other entries? Because good gameplay can keep people playing, but controversy keeps people talking. And nobody proves that better than, well, one of the more modern entries themselves, Fire Emblem Three Houses. Three Houses wasn't just popular because it was a good game. It was popular because it became a part of people's identities. You didn't just pick a route, you picked your house. Blue Lions became self-righteous Blue Lions players who thought that nothing they could do or their lord could do was wrong. Black Eagles players became these contrarian people who thought that the opposite view was the right one. And Golden Deer players, well, they just pranced around and acted like they had achieved enlightenment on the back of memes. But once these people chose a side, they're ride or die until the end. And that's where years of discussion came from. I know we meme a lot on Fire Emblem Three Houses, 3 years of discussion, 3 more years of discussion. But it's true. Was Edelgard right? Was she evil? Was Dimitri justified? What happened to him? Did Claude have the best vision? Which route is the morally correct one? Which route is the canon route? Which route had the best ending? There wasn't really a clear answer per se, and that's the point. Three Houses gave the community fuel. They're all, to a certain extent, controversial, and because it generates discussion and buzz, people will keep coming back for more, and the relevancy of it will never die. And this is precisely why we, as Fire Emblem fans, need that controversy. Without new controversy, the old controversy everyone's tired of will also never die. And of course, speaking of controversy, another example of that was the monastery, which in and of itself was a controversy above all controversies. Garreg Mach Monastery is the epitome of a hub world, one of the elements that have been deemed controversial in the Fire Emblem series as a whole during discussions. People feel like it wastes time in between maps, doesn't respect your time as a player, and has a lot of filler content that can be cut away and done away with instead of forcing the player to go through repetitive motions. And in some cases, even burn out and not finish the game. It's all very valid criticism. Even I feel the same way about it a lot of the time when I do play games with hub worlds, because I like just enough of it for some quality interactions with my units that doesn't impact my gameplay directly enough that I lose out on features if I decide to skip it. But we can't deny that this very element was pivotal to the success of Three Houses itself. I mean, without the monastery, I don't think the game would have been nearly as popular as it is simply because of the crowd it appealed to. People came for the Hogwarts-esque and personified environment of house competition that it promised. They came to be the teacher that took care of their students. We didn't just play Fire Emblem Three Houses, we lived in Garreg Mach. It felt like every time we powered on the game to play, we were absorbed into this world where we were involved in cooking, eating with our students, training them, sitting down for tea, developing support conversations, looking for lost items, being greeted at the door by the gatekeeper, and even just listening to the random thoughts of both students, faculty, and random soldiers alike based on the goings-on of the world around us. It created a world that was built unlike any other game in the Fire Emblem series. And it succeeded heavily because of that very build. A lot of players hated how much time it took. Some thought it ruined the pacing. Others felt it became repetitive on repeat playthroughs. It's all fair criticism, but it also did something no Fire Emblem game had ever really done before. It made players live in the world. And that matters. Because the more immersed players feel, the more personally invested they become, and when that big war finally breaks out later on in the story, it hits harder because these weren't just units anymore. They were your people. They were your family. And Three Houses wasn't the first Fire Emblem game to understand this, by the way. Oh no, because before that, there was the mother of all controversies, Fire Emblem Fates. It came with the promise that you can side with one of two factions, the good guys or the bad guys, or so it seemed. But then also ended up trying to create a third golden route, and the story overall was a complete mess that people still cite to this day as being one of the worst stories in the series, with some truly bad and comical characters, especially the villains. But that's exactly why people still talk about it a lot more to this day, and it gets discussed at length, even if it's to position it at the bottom of a tier list. What it did was so controversial that it sticks. It does help that Conquest also has decent gameplay too, so people keep replaying it, but no one has forgotten the story or the characters because it was such a memorable experience that it kept people invested. They got to choose who their army was, and they sided with them ride or die, like we did in Three Houses. It created alliances and opposition on the internet. It let people fight for their decisions online with other people, and it generates discussion, which keeps the game relevant. Do you pick your family by blood, or the family that raised you? The execution was messy, sure, but the premise was powerful. Choices create loyalty. Loyalty creates arguments. Arguments create discussion, and discussion keeps games culturally alive. That's why even games people criticize can remain relevant for years. Now compare both of these to Engage. Again, this isn't me saying that Engage is bad. If anything, Engage actually might age very well down the line because gameplay matters a lot in our niche of gaming. But overall, it was easier to summarize. It had great mechanics, it had a simpler story, there was less ideological tension, there were fewer unresolved questions, and there was obviously less faction identity. There wasn't a huge who was right debate, there wasn't a house people would defend with their life, there wasn't a world players felt embedded in for hundreds of hours. Once people finished talking about builds, rings, difficulty, mechanics, the larger conversation slowed down because there was less friction, and friction matters. Now, to be fair, controversy alone does not make a game good. A bad game can be controversial and still fail. We have a ton of those out on the market. A messy story can frustrate people more than excite them, but when a good game gives people meaningful disagreements, competing perspectives, and choices they actually care about, that's when the discussion lasts for years, that's when communities stay alive, and that's when fans keep coming back. And that's what Three Houses did. That's why the next Fire Emblem game, Fortune's Weave, needs more than just polished maps and strong combat. It needs something players can't stop debating. A leader half the fanbase loves and half the fanbase distrusts. A route choice that people can regret. A moral dilemma with no clear answer. In a world that players feel personally attached to. That's really what made us different. I look back so fondly on what I think is a renaissance age for Fire Emblem when Three Houses came back. The creators were collaborating all over the place. People were happy. The internet was buzzing. YouTube was exploding with videos about Three Houses left, right, and center. My own personal channel saw a ton of growth at the time, which was great. I got to share that buzz. I had a ton of people in the comments. I had a ton of videos coming out. My friends were all happy. Everyone was playing the game. Everyone had a different opinion on the game, and everyone was having fun. And that's the difference. When nobody argues about a Fire Emblem game, sometimes that means nobody cares about it for very long either. And that's just the unfortunate nature of things. So what do you think? Do you think Fire Emblem actually needs controversy? Because as toxic as it sounds at surface level, I personally think controversy is a good thing in the long run. But let me know in the comments below, and if you like this video, give it a hype and a like, and maybe check out some of my other content like the Braum solo I just did, for example. Very impressive content. And subscribe while you're at it for good measure, why not? But that's all from me for this video, and I'll see you all in another one very soon. Peace.